She was buried alive by her own kind, and the one who dug her out wore a crown of scars. The cave breathed with her. Cold stone pressed against Mira's spine as she curled tighter into the shadows, her breath shallow, her heartbeat a drum she feared would betray her. Outside, the wind howled through the mountain pass like a chorus of wolves mourning their dead. She had been here 3 days, maybe 4. Time lost meaning when survival became the only prayer. They had left her for the rogues. Her own pack, her blood, had driven her to the edge of their territory and pointed toward the wasteland. "You bring nothing but shame," the beta had said, his voice flat as stone. "No wolf, no strength, no mate. Leave before the alpha decides you're worth killing." So she ran. And when the rogues came sniffing through the night, she found this place. A crack in the mountain's ribs, narrow enough to hide her scent, deep enough to swallow her whole. Now she pressed her palm against the cave wall, tracing the ancient carvings etched into the rock. Symbols she didn't understand. Circles within circles. A crescent moon split by a blade. Her fingers trembled as they followed the lines, and for a moment, just a breath, she felt something stir beneath the stone. A pulse. A memory. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Not the chaotic scramble of rogues, but the measured stride of someone who owned the ground beneath his boots. Mira's body went rigid. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows, her nails digging into the dirt. The footsteps stopped at the cave's entrance. Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then a voice, low, rough, edged with exhaustion. "I know you're in there." Her breath caught. "I can smell your fear, and your blood." Blood. She looked down at her hands, at the cuts from climbing through bramble and stone. She hadn't realized how much she'd bled, how far the scent had traveled. "Come out," the voice said, "or I come in." Mira's throat tightened. She had no weapon, no wolf, no way to fight. But she had survived this long by choosing her battles, and this, whoever he was, felt like a battle she couldn't win. So she stayed silent. The footsteps resumed, closer now, entering the cave. She saw him in fragments, the shadow first, towering and broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. Then the firelight from a torch he carried, casting gold across his face, sharp jaw, scarred brow, eyes the color of winter storms. And when those eyes found her, crouched in the corner like a wounded animal, they didn't soften. They sharpened. "There you are," he said. Mira's voice came out hoarse, broken. "Stay back." He tilted his head, studying her the way a wolf studies prey. But he didn't advance. Instead, he crouched, lowering himself to her level, and set the torch on the ground between them. The flames danced, throwing shadows across his face. "You've been here 3 days," he said. "Not a question. A fact." She said nothing. "The rogues circled this place twice yesterday. You're lucky they're idiots." He paused, his gaze dropping to the carvings on the wall behind her. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or unease. "Do you know what this place is?" Mira shook her head. "It's a sanctuary," he said quietly. "Old pack law. Anyone who reaches it can't be harmed. Not by rogues, not by rivals." His eyes returned to hers, cold and unreadable. "Not even by me." "Then why are you here?" she whispered. He stood, turning his back to her, his broad frame blocking the cave's entrance. "Because sanctuaries don't last forever. And when the moon rises tonight, this protection ends." Her stomach dropped. "So you have a choice," he continued, his voice low and deliberate. "You can stay here and hope the rogues don't find you first. Or you can come with me." "Why would I go anywhere with you?" He glanced over his shoulder, and for the first time she saw something other than cold calculation in his eyes. Exhaustion. Pain. the weight of something ancient and unshakable. Because I'm the only reason you're still breathing. Mira's hands trembled. Who are you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his cloak and pulled out a worn leather pendant, a wolf's head carved into black stone, crowned with silver thorns. Her breath stopped. My name is Kale, he said, and I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Packs. The words hung in the air like smoke. You're lying, she breathed. I wish I was. He turned fully now, his expression unreadable. But the truth doesn't care what you believe. The rogues are hunting you because you crossed into contested territory, and contested territory belongs to me. I didn't know. I don't care. His voice cut through her panic like a blade. What I care about is why someone with no wolf, no pack, and no scent of power is hiding in a place that only opens for those marked by the goddess. Mira's heart slammed against her ribs. I don't know what you're talking about. Kyle stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the firelight. Then why, he said softly, dangerously, are the carvings on that wall glowing? She turned and saw it. The symbols she had touched, the circles, the crescent moon, the blade, were glowing faint silver, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. No, she whispered. That's not. You're marked, Kyle said. His voice was steady, but something beneath it trembled. The goddess chose you, and that means you're mine. Mira looked up at him, her chest heaving, her mind racing. I don't belong to anyone. He crouched again, close enough that she could see the scars crossing his throat, the exhaustion carved into his face. You think I want this? He said quietly. You think I want another broken soul added to the weight I already carry? Then let me go. I can't. His jaw tightened. Because if the rogues find you, they'll tear you apart to get to what's inside you. And if my enemies find you first, they'll use you to destroy everything I've built. I don't have anything inside me. Kyle reached out slowly, so slowly she could have stopped him, and pressed 2 fingers to the center of her chest, right over her heart. The moment he touched her, the cave exploded with light. Silver flames erupted from the carvings, racing up the walls, across the ceiling, filling the space with a brilliance that burned without heat. Mira gasped, stumbling back, but Kale held her steady, his hand still pressed to her heart. You feel that? He said, his voice rough. That's the Pathfinder's mark, the gift of those who can see what others can't. Heal what others break. Lead the lost home. The light faded as quickly as it had come, leaving only the dying torch and the echo of something vast and ancient. Kale pulled his hand back, his expression unreadable. You're not just marked, little wolf. You're chosen. And whether you like it or not, that makes you the most dangerous thing in these mountains. Mira's voice shook. I don't want to be dangerous. Too late. He stood, offering her his hand. Now come, before the moon rises and this place forgets mercy. She stared at his hand, scarred, strong, steady, and for the first time in 3 days, she stopped running. She took it. Chapter 2. The snow began as they left the cave, soft at first, drifting through the pines like ash from a distant fire. But within minutes, it thickened into a veil that swallowed the world whole. Mira walked 3 steps behind Kyle, her bare feet numb against the frozen ground, her thin cloak doing nothing to stop the cold from sinking into her bones. He hadn't spoken since they left the sanctuary. She watched his back, broad, unyielding, moving through the storm like it was nothing more than morning mist. He wore no crown, no armor, just dark leather and fur, and the kind of silence that felt heavier than words. Where are we going? She finally asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. Somewhere the rogues won't follow. That's not an answer. He didn't slow. It's the only one you're getting. Mira's jaw tightened. She wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, explanations, some reason to trust this stranger who claimed to be a king. But exhaustion weighed heavier than pride, and she had learned long ago that survival meant choosing silence over defiance. So she walked. They moved through the forest for what felt like hours, the world narrowing to the crunch of snow beneath boots, the howl of wind through branches, and the rhythm of her own ragged breathing. Her legs burned. Her lungs ached. But every time she thought she might collapse, she looked at Cale's back and found something stubborn rising in her chest. If he could keep walking, so could she. Finally, the trees opened into a clearing, and there, carved into the side of the mountain, was a structure that looked older than the forest itself. Stone walls blackened by time, a door reinforced with iron, symbols etched into the archway, the same symbols from the cave. Kyle stopped at the entrance and turned to face her. Inside. Mira hesitated. What is this place? A way station, built by the old packs before the wars. He pushed the door open, revealing a dark interior lit only by dying embers in a stone hearth. It's neutral ground. No pack can claim it. No blood can be spilled here. She stepped inside slowly, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The space was small, a single room with a fire pit, a pile of furs in the corner, and shelves lined with dried meat and herbs. It smelled of smoke and age and something faintly metallic. Cale closed the door behind them, sealing out the storm. For a moment they stood in silence, the only sound the crackle of the fire as it fought to stay alive. Then Mira spoke, her voice quiet but steady. You said I'm marked, that I'm a pathfinder. What does that mean? Kyle moved to the hearth and crouched, feeding the flames with fresh wood. He didn't look at her. It means you can see things others can't, feel things they've forgotten, heal wounds that go deeper than flesh. I can't do any of that. Not yet. He glanced at her over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. But the goddess doesn't mark without reason, and if she chose you, it's because you're needed. For what? That, Kyle said, turning back to the fire, is what I'm trying to figure out. Mira wrapped her arms around herself, the cold still clinging to her skin. I don't want to be needed. I just want to be left alone. Then you should have stayed hidden. I tried. Not hard enough. He stood, brushing ash from his hands. The moment you touched those carvings, you sent a signal across every territory within 100 miles, every alpha, every rival, every enemy I've spent years keeping at bay. His voice was low, controlled, but something dangerous simmered beneath it. You didn't just reveal yourself, little wolf. You revealed me. Mira's chest tightened. I didn't know. Ignorance doesn't erase consequence. Then why didn't you leave me there? Her voice rose, frustration bleeding through exhaustion. If I'm such a problem, why bring me here? Cale crossed the space between them in 2 strides, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Because the goddess marked you, and when she marks someone, they become a key, a weapon, a target. His gaze burned into hers. And I'd rather you be my problem than someone else's victory. Mira held his stare, refusing to flinch. I'm not a weapon. Not yet, he said again. But you will be. He turned away, moving to the pile of furs and pulling one free. He tossed it to her without ceremony. Sleep. We leave at first light. She caught the fur, her hands trembling. Where are we going? North. To my territory. He sat against the far wall, his back to the stone, his eyes closing. If you're going to survive, you need to learn what you are, and I'm the only one who can teach you. Mira clutched the fur, her mind racing. And if I refuse? Cale's eyes opened, cold and sharp. Then the rogues will find you within a day, and when they do, they'll rip you apart just to see if your blood tastes like power. The words hung in the air like a noose. Mira said nothing. She moved to the opposite side of the room, wrapping the fur around her shoulders, and curled into the corner. The fire crackled, the wind howled beyond the walls, and somewhere in the distance, wolves sang to the rising moon. She closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come, because all she could feel was the weight of his words pressing against her chest. "You're mine," and the terrifying truth beneath them. She was beginning to believe him. Chapter 3. The morning came gray and cold. Mira woke to the sound of metal scraping stone. She blinked against the dim light filtering through cracks in the door and found Cale sharpening a blade by the dying fire. His movements were methodical, precise, the kind of ritual born from years of repetition. He didn't look at her. "We move in 5 minutes." She sat up slowly, every muscle in her body screaming. "I need food. There's dried meat on the shelf. I need water. There's snow outside." Mira's jaw clenched. She stood, ignoring the protest of her legs, and moved to the shelf. The dried meat was tough and tasteless, but she forced it down. Survival first, pride later. Cale stood, sliding the blade into a sheath at his hip. "When we leave, you stay close. You don't speak unless I tell you to. You don't run unless I say run. Understood? I'm not a child. Then stop acting like one." He turned to face her, his expression hard. "Out there, you're a target. Every rogue pack within 50 miles is hunting for the source of that signal you sent. And if they find us before we reach my territory, we're both dead." Mira swallowed. "Then why take me at all?" "Because dead. You're a tragedy. Alive. You're leverage." He moved to the door, his hand resting on the iron handle. "And I need leverage more than I need tragedy." He pushed the door open, and the world beyond was white and endless. They walked. The snow had stopped, but the cold remained, sharp, biting, relentless. Mira pulled her cloak tighter, her breath misting in the air. Kyle moved ahead, his strides long and sure, his eyes scanning the tree line with the focus of a predator who knew he was being hunted. She wanted to ask him questions, wanted to understand why the goddess would mark someone like her, weak, packless, forgotten. But the silence between them felt too fragile to break. So she walked. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, but the cold didn't ease. Mira's feet ached. Her lungs burned, but she kept moving, driven by something she couldn't name. Then Kyle stopped. Mira nearly collided with his back. She opened her mouth to ask why, but he raised a hand, cutting her off. Silence. She listened. At first she heard nothing but the wind and the creak of branches, but then, faint, distant, the sound of voices, low, rough, laughing, rogues. Cale's hand moved to his blade. He turned his head slightly, his voice barely a whisper. "Stay behind me. Don't move. Don't breathe loud." Mira nodded, her heart hammering. The voices grew closer. 3 of them emerged from the trees, lean, ragged, eyes gleaming with hunger. They stopped when they saw Cale, their smiles fading into something colder. "Well, well," the largest one said, his voice a gravelly rasp. "The king himself, out here all alone." Cale didn't move. "Turn around, walk away, and I'll let you live." The rogue laughed. "You're in no position to make threats, Your Majesty. Not out here, not without your pack." "I don't need a pack." "Maybe not." The rogue's eyes shifted past Cale, landing on Mira. His smile returned, sharp and cruel. "But we'll take the girl." Kyle's voice dropped, cold as winter stone. "No, you won't." The rogue lunged. Kyle moved faster. Mira didn't see the blade leave its sheath, didn't see the strike. She only saw the rogue collapse, blood spilling into the snow, his eyes wide with shock. The other 2 hesitated. "Leave," Kyle said, "or join him." They ran. Kyle stood over the body, his breathing steady, his blade dripping red. He wiped it clean on the dead rogue's cloak and sheathed it without ceremony. Then he turned to Mira, his expression unreadable. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "Good." He stepped past her, resuming his path through the snow. "Keep moving." Mira stared at the body, at the blood staining the white ground, and felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not horror, understanding. This was the world she had entered, and if she wanted to survive it, she needed to become something more than prey. She turned and followed him. They walked in silence until the sun began to set, painting the snow in shades of gold and crimson. Cale finally stopped at the edge of a frozen river, his gaze distant. "We'll camp here tonight," he said. Mira nodded, too tired to argue. As she gathered wood for a fire, she felt his eyes on her. When she glanced up, he was watching her with something that might have been curiosity or concern. "You didn't scream," he said. "What? When I killed him, you didn't scream." Mira set the wood down, her hands trembling. Would it have changed anything? No. Then why would I waste the breath? Kyle's expression softened, just for a moment, before hardening again. "You're stronger than I thought. I've had to be." He turned away, his voice quiet. Then maybe the goddess didn't make a mistake after all. Mira said nothing. She just stared into the growing darkness and wondered if strength was enough or if mercy mattered more. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments of the night they find you. Chapter 4. The fire burned low between them. Mira sat with her knees drawn to her chest, watching the flames dance against the darkness. Across from her, Cale sharpened his blade again. A ritual, she realized, not a necessity. Something to keep his hands busy. Something to fill the silence. "How long have you been king?" she asked. He didn't look up. 7 years. That's a long time to carry a crown. It's a longer time to carry the weight beneath it. She studied him in the firelight, the hard lines of his face, the scars that told stories he'd never speak aloud, the exhaustion etched into every feature. "Why did you accept it?" "I didn't." He set the blade aside, his jaw tight. "My father died in the war. My brother fell a month later. The crown didn't ask if I wanted it. It just landed on my head and stayed there. You could have refused and let the northern packs tear themselves apart." His eyes met hers, cold and unflinching. "That's not honor. That's cowardice." Mira looked away. "And what about me? Am I honor or cowardice?" "You're neither." He leaned back against the tree behind him, his voice quieter now. "You're a question I don't have an answer to yet. The goddess marked me. You said so yourself." "She did, but I don't know why." He paused, his gaze distant. The Pathfinders were extinct, wiped out in the purges a century ago. Their bloodline ended. Their gifts died with them. His eyes returned to her. "So, how are you here?" "I don't know." "Neither do I. And that," he said, "is what keeps me awake at night." The fire crackled. The river behind them whispered over frozen stones. Mira wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "My pack said I was cursed, that I brought bad luck. That's why they rejected me." "Your pack was afraid. Of what?" "Of what they couldn't control." Kyle's voice was steady, but something beneath it trembled. "Fear makes cowards of even the strongest wolves, and cowards always destroy what they don't understand." "Is that what you'll do? Destroy me?" He held her gaze for a long moment. "If you become a threat, yes." The honesty was a knife, but Mira didn't flinch. "And if I don't?" "Then maybe," he said quietly, "you'll be the first thing I've protected that's worth saving." The words hung between them, heavy and unfinished. Mira wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to understand the shadow that crossed his face when he said it. But before she could speak, Cale stiffened, his hand moving to his blade. "Get up," he said. "What? Now." She scrambled to her feet just as the howls began. They came from the north, low, guttural, echoing through the trees like a death hymn. Mira's blood turned to ice. "Rogues?" she whispered. "Worse." Kyle stood, his blade drawn, his eyes scanning the darkness. "Hunters." "What's the difference? Hunters don't just kill. They collect." He moved in front of her, his body a wall between her and the sound. "Stay close, don't run. And whatever happens, don't let them see your mark." "How?" "Cover your chest. Now." Mira pulled her cloak tight, her hands shaking. The howls grew closer. Then they stopped. Silence fell like a shroud. Cale's breathing was controlled, measured. Mira's was ragged, desperate. She pressed against his back, feeling the tension in his muscles, the coiled readiness of a predator waiting to strike. Then a voice emerged from the darkness. "Kyle." Low, feminine, dripping with amusement. A figure stepped into the firelight, tall, lean, wrapped in black leather and silver chains. Her hair was white as snow, her eyes the color of blood. She smiled, and it was the smile of something that had forgotten mercy long ago. "It's been a while, brother." Mira's breath stopped. Kyle didn't lower his blade. "Celine." Still so formal. Celine tilted her head, her gaze sliding past him to Mira. "And who's this? A new pet? Leave. Not until I see what you're hiding." Celine stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "I felt the signal 3 days ago. The old magic. The Pathfinder's mark." Her smile widened. "And you, dear brother, have been keeping secrets." Kyle's voice was stone. "She's under my protection." "Is she now?" Celine laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "And since when does the King of the North protect weaklings?" "Since the goddess chose her." The laughter died. Celine's expression shifted, curiosity replacing mockery. "Impossible. The Pathfinders are dead." "Apparently not." Celine's eyes locked on Mira, and for the first time, Mira saw something other than cruelty in them. Hunger. Need. "Let me see her mark," Celine said. "No." "Cale." "I said no." Celine's smile returned, colder now. "You can't protect her forever, brother. Not from me, not from the others, not from what's coming. Try me." For a moment, they stood locked in a silent battle of wills, siblings bound by blood and broken by war. Then Celine stepped back, her hands raised in mock surrender. "Fine. Keep your little Pathfinder, but know this." Her eyes burned into his. "The Council knows she exists, and they're coming for her. All of them. Let them come." "They will." Celine turned, melting back into the shadows. Her voice drifted through the darkness like smoke. "And when they do, you'll have to choose, the girl or the crown." Then she was gone. Kyle stood frozen, his blade still raised, his breathing hard. Mira's voice was barely a whisper. "Who was that?" "My sister." "Your sister wants me dead." "She wants everyone dead." He lowered his blade, his shoulders sagging. "But she's right about one thing. The Council is coming, and when they do, this stops being about survival." "Then what does it become?" Kyle turned to face her, his expression carved from exhaustion and determination. "War." Chapter 5. They didn't sleep. Kyle kept watch through the night, his back against the tree, his blade across his lap. Mira sat by the dying fire, her knees drawn to her chest, her mind racing with questions she didn't dare ask. "Your sister wants me dead. The Council is coming. War." When the first light of dawn crept through the trees, Kyle finally spoke. "We need to move faster." Mira nodded, too tired to argue. They walked through the morning in silence, the forest growing denser, the air colder. Mira's feet were numb, her lungs burned. But she pushed forward, driven by the fear that if she stopped, she'd never start again. By midday, they reached the edge of a gorge. A narrow bridge of rope and wood stretched across the chasm, swaying in the wind. Below, the river roared through jagged rocks, white and furious. Kale stopped at the edge. This is the border. Once we cross, we're in northern Pack territory, my territory. Mira stared at the bridge. It doesn't look safe. It's not. He stepped onto the first plank, testing its weight. But it's the only way. She followed, her hands gripping the rope rails, her steps careful and deliberate. The bridge swayed beneath her, and she fought the urge to look down. Halfway across, Kale stopped. "What's wrong?" Mira asked. "Someone's coming." She looked back and saw them, shadows moving through the trees. 6 of them. Maybe more. "Who are they?" "Council scouts." Kale's jaw tightened. "They're faster than I thought. Can we outrun them?" "Not on this bridge." "Then what do we do?" Kale turned to face her, his expression grim. "You keep walking. I'll hold them off." "No." "Mira." I said no. Her voice was steady, stronger than she expected. "I'm not leaving you. If they take you, they won't." Kyle stared at her, something flickering in his eyes. Surprise, respect, something closer to pain. "You're more stubborn than I thought." "I've had good teachers." He almost smiled. Then the moment shattered. The scouts reached the bridge. Kyle drew his blade. "Get behind me." But Mira didn't move. Instead, she stepped forward, her hand reaching for the rope rail. And as her fingers touched it, something inside her woke. The bridge began to glow. Silver light erupted from the ropes, racing along the length of the bridge, wrapping around the wood like living vines. The scouts froze, their eyes wide with shock. Mira gasped, stumbling back. "What's happening?" Kyle's voice was low, reverent. "The Pathfinder's gift. You're awakening." The light intensified, blinding and beautiful. And then, with a sound like thunder, the bridge behind them collapsed, ropes snapping, wood splintering, falling into the gorge below. The scouts screamed as they fell. Silence. Mira stared at her hands, trembling. "I didn't mean to." "You saved us." Kale's voice was quiet. "You felt the danger, and the magic responded. I don't know how—" "You don't need to know. Not yet." He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and grounding. "But you're starting to understand, and that's enough." Mira looked at the collapsed bridge, at the gorge below, and felt something shift inside her. Not fear. Power. And for the first time, she wondered if the goddess had chosen her not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to carry the weight. Chapter 6. They reached the Northern Territory by nightfall. The forest opened into a valley carved by ice and time. In the distance, stone towers rose against the twilight sky, their walls blackened by centuries of fire and war. Smoke curled from chimneys. Torches flickered along battlements. And everywhere, wolves, hundreds of them, moved through the shadows like living ghosts. Mira stopped at the valley's edge, her breath catching. "This is your home?" "This is my burden," Kale said. "Home is something else entirely." They descended into the valley, and as they approached the gates, wolves emerged from the darkness. Dozens of them. Their eyes gleamed in the torchlight, their movements predatory and synchronized. But none attacked. They bowed. Kyle walked through them without acknowledgement, his focus on the gates ahead. Mira followed, her heart pounding, her hands trembling. The gates opened. Inside, the pack gathered. Warriors in leather and fur, elders wrapped in cloaks of silver, children watching from windows with wide, curious eyes. They all stared at Mira, their expressions ranging from confusion to suspicion to something that might have been hope. Kale stopped in the center of the courtyard and turned to face them. "This is Mira," he said, his voice carrying across the silence. "She is marked by the goddess. She is under my protection, and anyone who harms her answers to me." The crowd murmured, whispered, a few bowed, others frowned. An elder stepped forward, a woman with silver hair and eyes like storm clouds. "The council won't accept this, Kale. They'll see it as defiance. Let them. You're risking war. I'm preventing it." Kale's gaze swept across the crowd. "The Pathfinder has returned, and if we stand with her, we stand with the goddess." The elder's expression softened. "And if the council doesn't believe, then they'll learn." He turned to Mira, his voice quieter now. "You'll stay in the tower, my chambers, until we know you're safe." "I don't need—" "You don't get a choice." His eyes held hers, steady and unyielding. "Not anymore." Mira wanted to argue, wanted to refuse, but the exhaustion in his face stopped her. So she nodded. Kale led her through the courtyard, up stone stairs worn smooth by time, to a tower that overlooked the valley. The chamber inside was simple: a bed of furs, a hearth, a window facing the mountains. "Rest," he said. "We'll talk in the morning." He turned to leave. "Kyle." He stopped. "Thank you." He didn't turn around, but his voice, when it came, was softer than she'd ever heard it. "Don't thank me yet." Then he was gone. Mira stood alone in the tower, staring out at the valley below. The wolves moved through the darkness like shadows made flesh. The moon rose, full and silver, and somewhere in the distance a howl echoed through the night. Not a threat, a promise. Subscribe if you believe mercy can crown even the fallen. Chapter 7. The morning brought whispers. Mira woke to the sound of voices drifting through the tower walls, low, urgent, laced with fear and fascination. She moved to the window and looked down at the courtyard. The pack had gathered, their eyes turned toward the gates. Someone was coming. She dressed quickly and descended the stairs. Kale was already in the courtyard, his expression carved from stone. The elder from the night before stood beside him, her face pale. "They're here," the elder said. "How many?" "All of them." Kyle's jaw tightened. "Open the gates." The gates swung wide, and the council entered. They came on horseback, 7 alphas, each representing a different territory. Their armor gleamed in the morning light. Their banners snapped in the wind. And at their center rode a woman with hair like spun gold and eyes that burned with authority. She dismounted, her movements fluid and commanding. When she spoke, her voice carried across the courtyard like a blade. "Kale." "Liana." "We heard a rumor," Liana said, her gaze sweeping across the pack before landing on Mira, "that you've been hiding something interesting." Kale stepped forward, placing himself between Liana and Mira. "She's under my protection." "So the rumor is true." Liana's smile was cold. "You've found a Pathfinder." "I've found someone marked by the goddess. What she is remains to be seen." "Then let us see." Liana moved toward Mira, her eyes sharp and calculating. "Show me your mark, girl." Mira's hands trembled. She looked at Kyle, but his expression offered no guidance. "Show her," he said quietly. Mira pulled her cloak aside, revealing the silver symbol glowing faintly over her heart, the crescent moon split by a blade. The courtyard fell silent. Liana stared, her expression shifting from skepticism to shock. "By the goddess. She's real," Kale said, "and she's mine." Liana's eyes snapped to his. "Yours. Under my protection, in my territory. That makes her mine. That makes her a weapon." Liana's voice hardened. "And weapons belong to the council, not this one." "You're defying us, Kyle. I'm protecting her." He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "The council has no claim over the goddess's chosen, and if you try to take her, you'll answer to me." Liana's eyes narrowed. "You'd start a war over one girl?" I'd end one to keep her safe. The tension crackled like lightning. Then one of the other alphas, a massive man with a scar running from temple to jaw, spoke. Perhaps a test. Liana turned. What kind of test? If she's truly a pathfinder, she'll have the gift of healing. Let her prove it. Liana considered this, then nodded. Very well. She gestured to one of her warriors, a young man with a deep gash across his arm. Heal him. Mira's heart slammed against her ribs. I don't know how. Then learn, Liana said coldly. Kyle's voice was steady. Trust yourself. Mira approached the wounded warrior, her hands shaking. She knelt beside him, staring at the blood seeping through the bandage. She had no training, no knowledge, no idea what to do. But when she placed her hands over the wound, something inside her stirred. The mark on her chest began to glow. Silver light poured from her palms, wrapping around the warrior's arm like living thread. The blood stopped flowing. The skin began to knit together. And within moments, the wound was gone, only a faint scar remaining. The warrior stared at his arm, his eyes wide. It's healed. The courtyard erupted in whispers. Liana's expression was unreadable. Impressive. She stays with me, Kale said. Liana held his gaze for a long moment, then she nodded. For now. But the council will be watching, and if she becomes a threat, she won't. We'll see. Liana turned to mount her horse. Enjoy your Pathfinder, Kyle. But remember, the goddess gives gifts, and she takes them away just as easily. The council rode out, their banners disappearing into the forest. Mira stood in the center of the courtyard, her hands still glowing faintly, her mind reeling. Kyle approached, his expression softer now. You did well. I don't know what I did. You trusted the goddess. That's enough. She looked up at him, searching his face. What happens now? Now, he said quietly, you learn what it means to be a pathfinder, and I learn what it means to protect something that matters. Mira's breath caught. I matter to you? Kyle didn't answer. But the way his hand lingered on her shoulder said everything words couldn't. Chapter 8. The days that followed were strange and new. Kale assigned Mira a small chamber in the tower, simple but warm, with furs on the bed and a hearth that burned through the night. She was given food, clothing, and freedom to move through the compound. But freedom came with a shadow. Everywhere she went, wolves watched. Some with curiosity, others with suspicion, a few with something that might have been hope. The elder, whose name, she learned, was Thalia, became her guide. She taught Mira about the pack, the territories, the history of the Pathfinders. They were healers, Thalia explained as they walked through the courtyard. But not just of wounds. They could heal grudges, mend broken bonds, guide lost souls home. She paused, her gaze distant. That's why they were hunted. Because peace is more dangerous to tyrants than war. And now I'm one of them, Mira said quietly. Now you carry their legacy. Thalia placed a hand on her shoulder, and that is both gift and burden. Mira spent her evenings in the courtyard, practicing her gift. She healed small wounds, cuts, bruises, broken bones. Each time the mark on her chest glowed brighter. Each time she felt the power growing stronger. But each time she also felt the weight. Because healing meant feeling, and feeling meant carrying the pain of everyone she touched. One evening, as the sun set over the mountains, Kyle found her sitting by the fire, her hands trembling. You're pushing too hard, he said. I need to be ready. For what? For whatever's coming. She looked at him, her eyes tired. You said it yourself. The council is watching, and if I'm not strong enough, you're already strong enough. How do you know? Because you're still here. He sat beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. Strength isn't about power, Mira. It's about endurance. And you've endured more than anyone I know. She looked down at her hands. I'm tired, Kyle. I know. I don't know if I can keep doing this. You can. His voice was steady, certain, because you're not doing it alone. She looked at him, searching his face. Why do you care so much? Kyle was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice quiet and raw. Because I failed someone once, someone I was supposed to protect. And I've spent 7 years carrying that weight. He met her eyes. I won't fail again. Who was she? My mate. The word came out like a wound. She died because I chose duty over her, because I believed the crown mattered more than love. His jaw tightened. I was wrong, and by the time I realized it, she was gone. Mira's chest ached. I'm sorry. So am I. He looked away, his expression carved from grief. But I won't make that mistake again, not with you. The words hung between them, heavy and unfinished. Mira wanted to say something, wanted to bridge the distance. But before she could, a howl split the night. Not a greeting, a warning. Kyle stood, his hand moving to his blade. Stay here. What's happening? Rogues, at the border. He ran toward the gates, and despite his order, Mira followed. The courtyard was chaos. Warriors scrambling for weapons, elders shouting orders, and at the gates the scouts returned, bloodied, exhausted, eyes wide with fear. They're coming, one gasped. Hundreds of them, led by... Celine, Cale finished, his voice cold. The scout nodded. Cale turned to Thalia. Seal the gates. Prepare for siege. Cale, do it. Thalia obeyed, her face pale. Kyle turned to Mira, his expression hard. Get to the tower. Lock the door. Don't come out until I return. You can't fight them alone. I won't be alone. He gestured to the warriors gathering around him. But you need to stay safe. Why? Because if they take you, everything I fought for dies with you. Mira's breath caught. Then let me help. You're not ready. I healed a warrior in front of the council. I collapsed a bridge with a thought. How much more ready do I need to be? Kyle stared at her, conflict warring across his face. Then the gates shuddered, and Celine's voice drifted through the wood, cold and mocking. Hello, brother. Let's talk about mercy. Chapter 9. The gates held, but only barely. Cale stood at the battlements, his blade drawn, his eyes locked on the sea of rogues gathered outside. They stretched across the valley like a plague, hundreds of them, ragged and feral, their eyes gleaming with hunger. And at their center, Celine. She stood alone, unbothered by the cold, her white hair gleaming in the moonlight. When she spoke, her voice carried across the distance like a blade. Open the gates, Kyle. Let's settle this like family. You stopped being family the day you chose chaos over blood, Cale called back, and you stopped being a king the day you hid behind walls. Celine smiled, cold and sharp. But I'm not here for you. I'm here for the Pathfinder. She's not yours to take. She's not yours to keep. Try me. Celine's smile widened. Very well. She raised her hand, and the rogues charged. The gates exploded inward. Warriors clashed in the courtyard, steel against claw, fire against fury. Mira watched from the tower, her heart hammering, her hands glowing with silver light. She couldn't stay hidden. She ran down the stairs into the chaos. A rogue lunged at her. She raised her hand, and silver light erupted, throwing him back. Another attacked. She healed a wounded warrior mid-battle, giving him strength to fight again. The power flowed through her, wild and unstoppable. But it wasn't enough. The rogues kept coming. And then she saw him. Cale, surrounded, bleeding, fighting with the desperation of a man who had nothing left to lose. Celine circled him, her blade gleaming. You should have given her to me, brother. Never. Then die with her. She struck, but before the blade could land, Mira screamed, and the world exploded with light. Silver flames erupted from her body, racing across the courtyard, wrapping around every rogue, every warrior, every soul caught in the battle. The light didn't burn. It healed. It cleansed. It restored. The rogues collapsed, their rage melting into exhaustion. The warriors stood taller, their wounds closing, and Celine, for the first time, looked afraid. "What are you?" she whispered. Mira stepped forward, her body glowing like the moon itself. "I'm the Pathfinder, and I choose mercy." The light intensified, and when it faded, the rogues were gone, fled, broken. Celine stared at Mira, her expression unreadable. Then she turned and disappeared into the forest. Silence fell. Kyle stood in the center of the courtyard, his blade lowered, his eyes locked on Mira. "You saved us," he said quietly. "I saved you." He crossed the space between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. "Don't ever do that again." "I had to. I know." He pulled back, his hands framing her face. "And that's why you're mine." Mira's breath caught. "Yours? Mine to protect. Mine to stand beside. Mine to—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "Mine to love. If you'll have me." Tears burned in her eyes. "I'm just a broken girl from a forgotten pack. You're the strongest person I know." His thumb brushed her cheek. "And you're the only thing that's made me believe redemption is possible." "Then I'm yours," she whispered, "but only if you're mine." He smiled, a real smile, soft and broken and beautiful. "I've been yours since the moment you took my hand in that cave." He kissed her, and the courtyard erupted in howls, not of war, of hope. 3 months later, the valley bloomed. Spring came early, melting the snow, coaxing green from the frozen ground. The pack rebuilt what the rogues had destroyed. Walls were mended, wounds healed, and slowly, carefully, trust returned. Mira walked through the courtyard, her hand in Kale's, her heart lighter than she'd ever known it could be. "The council accepted your claim," Thalia said as they passed. "You're officially recognized as the Pathfinder." "And the packs?" "They're coming around, slowly. But they see what you did, and they believe." Mira smiled. "Good." Kyle squeezed her hand. "Ready for what comes next?" "What comes next?" "The other territories, the lost packs, the broken bonds." He looked at her, his eyes warm. "The goddess didn't mark you to stay in one place, Mira. She marked you to heal a world." Mira took a deep breath. "Then let's heal it." They walked together toward the gates, toward the mountains, toward the unknown. And behind them, the pack followed, not out of duty, but out of love. Because the girl who had been thrown to the wolves had become the reason they believed in mercy again. And the king who had carried the weight of the crown had finally found something worth living for. Each other. If your heart beat alongside ours, comment and subscribe. Because every soul that joins our moon keeps the flame of redemption alive.